Why would you want to make Chipotle at home? I have no idea, but today I'm going to.
Ryan Little.
So I was given a bit of a challenge this week to make Chipotle food at home. Ben, your faithful cameraman, loves Chipotle. He eats it probably twice a week on average, loves their Sofritas, even though he himself is not vegan or vegetarian. But he's asked me to make a Chipotle meal at home. Why would you make it at home? I don't know. I can drive 5 minutes and have Chipotle in less time it would take me to even go to the grocery store and pick out one of the ingredients I need for this. But we're gonna try it. Maybe it'll be better than what you could actually get at Chipotle. Maybe it'll be worse. Maybe it'll be a waste of time, but nonetheless, I'm going to do it. So stick around and let's make some Chipotle. These are all of the fruits and vegetables I need to make these dishes, and I'm just gonna prep them all first. The very first thing I want to prep here is the poblano peppers. I'm going to be blackening 2 of these so that I can remove the skins. It gives them a nice smoky flavor. I'm using my gas stove here to do this. You could do it on a barbecue. You could do it in a high heat oven around 450, 500 degrees. The goal here is just to get the entire green skin blackened and crisped up. And then I'm going to be throwing them in a bowl with a lid on for about 15 minutes. That's going to steam the skins off so I can easily remove them. I'm going to be chopping up this red onion into a fine dice. This is going to be going into the corn salsa. I need half of this yellow onion for the Sofritas sauce, and I'm just gonna be cutting this into quarters. I don't need it into small chunks because it's just gonna go into the food processor anyways. I'm going to be finely dicing these 2 jalapenos, cutting them in half, and then taking the centers out. Be really careful if you're doing this with your bare hands like I am. You want to make sure to wash your hands after you do this because you don't want to touch your eyes or anything else. It definitely will burn you. I need cilantro in both the rice and the corn salsa, so I'm chopping up a whole bunch of this, finely mincing it up. You don't want big chunks of this. The Sofritas recipe I'm using called for 1 medium Roma tomato. I didn't have one. I have these 2 smaller tomatoes, so I'm just quartering these. And I need 2 cloves of garlic, as well for the Sofritas, and I'm just going to be removing the skin from these. These poblano peppers have been steaming for about 10 minutes, and I can easily remove the skin with my hands. You don't want to rinse these off. It's okay if there's a few little pieces on there. You don't want to rinse off any of that smoky flavor that you worked so hard to achieve. These peppers are really soft, so you can easily open them, core them, and seed them with your hands. I'm going to be dicing one of them up to use in my corn salsa, and the other one I'm just gonna leave as it is so that I can put it into my Sofritas mixture. And the very last vegetable that I need to prep is my corn. I'm gonna be using frozen corn for the corn salsa. The recipe I'm using says don't use frozen corn, but it's gonna work out just fine. The original recipe called for 4 ears. 3 cups is equivalent to 4 ears. I'm just throwing them in some warm water to defrost, and I'll drain those and bring it right back and assemble the salsa. So I have all the ingredients here for the corn salsa. I have my red onion, chopped up diced jalapeno, cilantro, and one of the poblano peppers that has been diced, seeded, peeled. I also have half of a lime and half of a lemon, and let's go ahead and assemble. So I'm going to be adding here, I just need about a tablespoon of lemon juice. I should have been a little bit more careful. Looks like I have some seeds in there.
Worst video ever.
God. All right. Juice of a half of a lime. I do have a citrus juicer. I don't know why I'm not using it. All right, and I need a half cup of red onion, which this is a 1/4 cup measure, so obviously 2 of these. Need a 1/4 cup of the poblano peppers, which actually is about the entire poblano pepper. Need a 1/4 cup of the cilantro. And the recipe I'm using calls for the 2 jalapenos. I don't know if I'm gonna use all that. I'm gonna reserve a bit just in case. I'm gonna add a bit of salt to taste. The salt helps to draw some of the juices out of the onion and the jalapeno and the pepper, and just helps everything marry together. And the reason I wanted to make this first here is because I want it to sit and let the flavors mingle while I prepare the other items. All right, looks pretty good. Just gonna put a lid on it, throw it in the fridge. So by this point, I probably could have already gone to Chipotle and eaten but slow and steady wins the race, and I have a challenge here, and I'm going to continue. So the next thing I'm going to be making is the Sofritas. So to do that, I need to open up this package of tofu. And I'm just going to be cutting this up into 8 equal sections, and I'm not draining it ahead of time because I want to be able to, well, it'll drain a lot faster if I cut it up first and then sandwich it in between a towel. All right, I'm just gonna fold this over and let this dry out while I throw the rest of my ingredients in the food processor and make the sauce. All right, for the sauce, I'm just gonna be throwing everything in my food processor. I have the poblano pepper that I roasted but did not chop. I have the tomato that I chopped up, I guess 2 tomatoes, my half of an onion, and 2 cloves of garlic. To this, I'm adding in about 3 tablespoons of Chipotle chilies in adobo sauce, adding in a teaspoon of ancho chili, half of a teaspoon of oregano, teaspoon of red wine vinegar, adding in just about a half of a teaspoon of salt, and a bunch of cracked black pepper. Last thing is a half cup of water. Throwing the lid on. So I actually misread the recipe and I pulsed this a little bit longer than I should have. Guess I should have left it chunky, but it's still gonna taste great. I'm just gonna set this aside while I begin to cook my tofu. So to give this Sofritas the right texture, you really wanna brown it up first before you add the sauce and simmer it. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna turn the pan up, add some olive oil, put the pieces of tofu in there, let them get nice and crispy on each side, and then I'll go ahead and add the sauce. All right, we're just gonna let this go until it gets nice and brown on one side and then flip it over. So while this tofu cooks, I'm going to make the beans. I found this pretty easy recipe online that just calls for a can of black beans with some seasoning. So I'm gonna set this on the stove and just let it simmer on low while everything else gets going. So let's assemble that. Just gonna add this can of black beans. The recipe calls for the juice and all. If you ever noticed at Chipotle, their beans are always in liquid. So adding that, I didn't chop up another clove of garlic earlier, and I'm just gonna add about a teaspoon or just about a clove of already minced garlic. I need half teaspoon of chili powder. I'm using ancho again. I'm not really measuring here, but that looks like about a half teaspoon. About a half teaspoon of cumin. Looks about right. And the recipe called for 1/8 of a teaspoon of sugar. So I'm just gonna be adding a pinch of that. So just gonna put this on low, put a lid on it, and just let it go while everything else cooks. So the tofu is browned up nicely on one side, and I'm just gonna go ahead and flip it. Look at that. And you want it to get the same brown on the other side. This was definitely not the best tool for this job, but it's what I had in my hand. You could do this oil-free, but the oil really does help to create that crispy layer, and it's going to be something that you'll notice in the final product. So let this brown up on the other side, and then I'll be adding the sauce for it to braise and simmer. So this tofu is beautifully browned on both sides, you can see, and now I'm just gonna start to break it up. You could chop this up if you wanted, but I think the irregular shape is what Chipotle uses, so that's what I'm gonna be using here. All right, it looks like it's broken up nicely, and I'm going to add this sauce. And this is going to just simmer and cook down and absorb flavors for the next 10 minutes or so. So I've still got it on about medium low. And I'm just gonna let this cook, and I'll keep an eye on it for the next 10 or so minutes. All right, so I'm just gonna let that cook. Now, I didn't really mention it earlier, but to make this rice, I actually started the rice before I even started filming this video. This rice cooker I have here makes amazing brown rice, but it takes about 98 minutes to cook it, so I didn't have enough time to make it during this video. So it's already cooked, and what I did here is I've actually cooked it with a bay leaf, which I'm going to discard now, and just a little bit of salt. So I'm gonna empty this into a bowl. It's still really hot. I used a short grain rice. I think Chipotle uses a longer grain rice for theirs, but I had short grain on hand, so that's what I used. So I'm just breaking this up. Comes out of the rice cooker a little bit stuck together. You could make white rice, you could make it on the stove top, just follow the directions. Definitely add the bay leaf though. It adds a lot of great flavor to the rice. To this, I'm gonna add just a bit of oil. Now this is one thing I know vegans complain about, the fact that there's oil in the rice. It adds a bit of nice flavor though, and helps with texture. If you're going oil-free, obviously don't add that. I learned my lesson last time, and I'm going to be adding just about a tablespoon of lemon juice, tablespoon of lime juice. Much easier than trying to do it by hand. And that's just about a half lemon, a half lime each. The recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of cilantro. I already salted the rice when I cooked it, but I'm gonna add a bit more here. So I'm gonna toss this up, test it for flavor. That should be pretty much it. So one of the best things at Chipotle is their guacamole. I don't have a recipe for that. I hope I can make something similar. I'm just adding some avocados to a bowl here, squeezing them out, and I'm gonna use some of the leftover ingredients I have from the other components to just make a quick guacamole. So I have some tomatoes, just one of those small tomatoes. I'm gonna add a bit of red onion, bit of jalapeno, not measuring anything here, just throwing it in, and some cilantro, along with the juice of a half of a lime. And then I'm just going to mix all of these ingredients together. That should be a guacamole. The benefit of going to Chipotle is that they have everything that you could ever want on a burrito, all there behind the counter, and all you have to do is point to it, and the person puts it on that burrito for you and rolls it up. When you make it at home, you have to think about all of those individual components, the different salsas, the different sauces, the guacamole, the sofritas, the rice, the beans, all of those have to be made separately, and there are a lot of steps. And we're almost done here, but I'm definitely feeling the grind of having to make everything myself. We're down to the last item, which is the tortillas. Now, Chipotle has amazing tortillas that you really can't find anywhere. They're proprietary. They have a company that makes their own, and they advertise made with only 5 ingredients. So I looked at a couple things online, and I found that the closest thing you might be able to get are the uncooked tortillas. Now, they're in the refrigerator section of the grocery store. I found them just at the one down the street here, nothing fancy. So I'm going to be cooking some uncooked tortillas, and it's gonna be the last thing before we assemble. So let's do this. So these uncooked tortillas are quite a bit smaller than what we're used to at Chipotle, so that'll be an adventure in itself. But I'm just putting this uncooked tortilla here in the pan. It's on about medium-high heat, and we're just gonna flip it basically every 30 seconds or so. Bubbles will start to form, and we'll just keep flipping it again every 30 seconds or so, and until it's cooked. When it is cooked, I'll set it aside in a towel while I prepare the next one, and that'll just keep them warm and soft. So one looks done. Into a towel it goes. Here we have all of the components: our cilantro lime rice, sofritas, black beans, guacamole, corn salsa. I'm gonna be adding some tomatillo salsa and some Violife cheddar cheese as well. And don't forget the tortillas, which we made. And as I'm about to assemble these burritos, I keep thinking about other things I wish I would have put in here. I've got lettuce in the fridge, but I don't feel like cutting it up right now. I also have some Greek yogurt, some Kite Hill vegan Greek yogurt that I would use as sour cream. Again, that feels like a lot of extra work. It has been a quite a labor-intensive day here trying to make this meal. So let's go ahead and assemble a burrito and see how it turned out. These tortillas are tiny, so I have to be careful with how much stuff I add. Slotted spoon here to help drain the beans. I feel like I'm working in miniature here. Sofritas smells amazing. The moment of truth here, I'm going to try to roll this up. All right, well, I hope it tastes good. At least hope it's worth that. So, still think I can pick it up. Let's give it a taste. You know what? It's actually really good. It tastes just like Chipotle, which again begs the question, why would you want to make this at home? I do think the Sofritas recipe is really solid though. I would probably use that on its own just as tacos without going through all of the adventure of making these other ingredients as well, but it is really good. I'm not sure if it's better than Chipotle, if it's worth the time and effort to make it on your own. Jury's still out on that one, but I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad that I made it. A little grouchy about halfway through making it, but in the end, it actually tastes really good. And it'll be nice to have all these leftovers in my fridge. I guess that's one of the benefits, is that you can make extra so that you can have it throughout the week. You don't have to continually go back to Chipotle over and over again. You've got it in your fridge on hand for lunches, snacks, watching TV. So yeah, well, that was my Chipotle making adventure. I hope you liked it. Give some of the things a try. Again, I do think the Sofritas recipe is really solid. I just Google searched recipes for Chipotle and found them, and actually I have a link below that'll take you to all of those links. None of these are my original recipes, but give them a try if you want to, and take this little challenge upon yourself if you'd like. But check out my other videos. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. New videos come out every Monday, so stick around for another one next week. You can also follow me on Instagram at monsonmadethis, and I will see you next week with a brand new video. Have a good week.